Welcome everyone, thank you for coming. And I know we have a lot of great things going on with the school, but I would like to introduce you to a very special guest, Marja Brandon. She has many years working with students that have learning differences, and she's here to share some of her stories and adventures with you. So I'll leave it up to you.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you. I'm going to talk a little bit about dyslexia and stress and anxiety and how to survive it. But I'm going to talk about it from a can you all hear me? Yeah. Okay. I'm going to talk about it from a perspective that's a little bit different. First off, you're all in middle school, correct? Yeah. So you're all my favorite age group to talk to. But you need to understand something. First, it's really important, and I feel the way you do. I'm like, oh man, another speaker, right? I was very, very nervous coming here today, so much so that I almost didn't come. In fact, on Monday, I thought about, okay, should I call in sick on Thursday and tell them I can't make it? And on Tuesday, I thought about, no, I'll tell them I had something really important come up and I couldn't come. And the reason was because I got an email from Cindy Lopez saying, send us your slides by Tuesday. I didn't have any slides on Tuesday. They asked me to do a PowerPoint. I have a real hard time doing PowerPoints. Why? Because I'm dyslexic. Dyslexics how many of you are dyslexic? Raise your hand. Okay. Dyslexics have a very hard time putting together PowerPoints because it involves lots of words and getting the words in the right places and cutting and pasting and things that I have a really hard time with. And normally, I'm pretty old. I will admit this. You might have noticed my hair. I will tell you, I am 57. I have 4 children. My 4 children, anytime I used to have to do a PowerPoint, here's a hint, my 4 children would do them for me. I would tell my children what I needed, and then I would sit one of my children down, and I would tell them what I do, and they would drive for me at the computer, and they'd put the PowerPoint together. It was a brilliant system until all my 4 children grew up and moved out of the house. Now I don't have anyone to do these PowerPoints for me. Anyway, I realized, look, you're an adult, you can't just cancel. You can't call in sick on a speaking engagement. That's a bad thing to do, especially when you're ahead of school. I work over at Woodland School. So I'm a dyslexic speaking to dyslexics about dyslexia and anxiety, and I get really anxious when I do programs. In fact, my dyslexia makes me anxious all the time. And that's really common for dyslexics. In fact, it's really common for anybody with any kind of learning disability. Your learning disability, my learning disability, makes you prone to, makes you more susceptible to anxiety and feeling stress more than the average kid, because your brain works a heck of a lot harder than the typical brain, because information that's coming in gets broken down in extra different ways, and that means you're going to feel anxiety more than most kids do. And that's okay, because one of the things I'm going to tell you is that the other thing your dyslexia or your learning differences make you is also especially creative. And one of the things I've learned is that my dyslexia, oh, by the way, I also happen to have ADD. Who else has ADD? Anybody? Excellent. I also have a 3rd gift. Yes, hard to believe. I got the hat trick. I got dyslexia, I got ADD, I also got something called dysgraphia. Anyone have? Excellent. There it is. I got the hat trick. I got all 3. Only thing I didn't get was dyscalculia. Oh, well, okay, some of you got that too. But I got all 3. The problem was, I got all 3 back in 1970 when they weren't diagnosing all 3 of those fun things. And so, what that meant was that that's what my school days looked like. This is actually a picture of me with my father and my grandfather when I was 2 years old. And look at how excited I am about being read to. Do I look particularly excited? No, and that's pretty much the same look I had going through school all of the time, because books were a mystery to me. And here's the problem. I have two older brothers that were unfortunately pretty much geniuses. My older brother went to college after 9th grade. Not only did he go to college, he went to Yale. Damn, he was brilliant. He graduated from law school at age 21. Yeah, right. That's who I had as an older brother. Me, with the hat trick. That's who I had as an older brother. Then, my brother, who was slightly younger than him, equally gifted. Great. Then you get to me. So I had the teachers who had first my oldest brother, Yale guy. Then my next oldest brother, equally gifted. Then those same teachers get to me and they go, you, what happened? This is exactly what they would say. And so how did that make me feel? I felt this big, right? Because every teacher that would get to me would go, what, they broke the mold? Like, you know, like and so my self-esteem, by the time teachers would get to me, because I didn't have school at Sand Hill, I didn't have anything like that. My parents just sent me through the same exact schools. My self-esteem was this big. Oh, by the way, back then, I know this is back when the dinosaurs walked. We didn't have word processors. I didn't even have an electric typewriter in my house. So, typewriter, word, okay. We didn't have computers. I didn't have one of these things you carry around in your pocket. Yeah, I didn't have those. We only had the hardwired kind. So I didn't have anything I could type, correct, iPad, nothing. All papers from my English teacher were handwritten. Think of it, no whiteout. Whiteout wasn't invented yet. So think about dysgraphia and having to handwrite all F's. Okay? So everything was super hard. Now I'm following two older brothers who are super geniuses, like Wile E. Coyote, right? And I'm having to handwrite everything, and I can't do this, and I've got teachers who won't accept cross-outs. So I'm standing up over and over again, yeah.
Wait, you said you wrote it, I thought you had typewriters.
We had a typewriter, but the typewriter is like not electric. Punch, punch, punch,
Oh, yeah.
punch, punch. Like really hard. Yeah.
This is kind of off top, but it's sort of not off topic. Did your older brothers wear glasses?
No. Wow. Like, I mean, like, right. They got all the gifts, right? So really tough. So in high school, I am struggling. I graduated high school with not one, but two ulcers. You know what an ulcer is? It's like a hole in your stomach from stressing. It's like you're stressing so much over things that your stomach acids are like eating through your stomach. I go to my college counselor with my mother, and I've done my research, right? I'm worrying, and I say to my college counselor, with my mother next to me, I go, do you think there's a possibility I have this thing called dyslexia? And my college counselor in front of my mother says, don't be ridiculous. She's just lazy. My college counselor says this. I'm working 21 hours a day. I'm staying up. I'm sleeping 3 hours a night to work on homework. I'm only sleeping 3 hours a night. And this is what she says to my mother. And my mother goes, okay, I think you're right. Really? Okay, somehow I get into college, and in college, thankfully, I'm in an art class, and in the art class, now, you need to know, in high school, I used to find refuge in my high school. I would hide. I was in a K-12 school. I would hide in the lower school art room. That's where I found refuge, was hiding with the lower school kids. Like I had the art teacher who was so kind, she would let me student teach with all the little kids. Because why? Because the little kids weren't judgmental. I'd go in there and the little kids were great. And you know what I figured out working with the little kids? I'd talk to the little kids and I figured out that I could say one thing to one little kid and it worked really well. And I'd say the same thing to the next little kid and it wouldn't work at all. I'd say, wow, that piece is really interesting. And that little kid would go, why? Why do you think that? And I'd say the same thing to this next little kid, and the little kid would go, why, thank you. And I realized that you had 15 kids in a class, you were working with 15 different brains. And it began to occur to me that if I had 15 little kid different brains in one class, then maybe, just maybe, my brain was different too. That was the first time that occurred to me. That maybe my brain was different and my brain wasn't bad. It was the first time that occurred to me, was working with little kids. So when I got to college finally, and I was in an art class, and we were drawing a figure. We had a figure standing in the room, a person, we were asked to draw the figure. And no matter what I was drawing, when I was drawing the arm came out looking broken. I had this great professor who kept circling around me, looking at it, and kept going, can you just redraw that arm? Can you just redraw that arm? Finally, he called me into class. At the end of class, he goes, I'd like to see you after class. And I thought, this is it. Somebody's discovered that I shouldn't really be in this college. I'm going to be thrown out of college. They realized I'm a fake. I kept thinking I was a fake. I shouldn't have gotten into this college, and I was now being discovered. Because I kept thinking there's something wrong with me, right? He calls me into class afterwards, and I'm thinking, for sure, this is it. I'm going to be thrown out of college. He calls me into class afterwards, and he goes, I'd like you to go to our testing center. I think you're dyslexic. And my jaw just hit the floor. And I was like, what? He goes, I've been watching the way you're drawing. He goes, you draw like a dyslexic. What? That's exactly what I said. I was like, what? He goes, I've had other dyslexics in my class. Do you draw like a dyslexic? Has anyone ever asked you if you were dyslexic? And it was like my world opened up. I went to the testing center. I got tested. Sure enough, not only was I dyslexic, guess what? EDD, dysgraphia. It was amazing. My world opened up. My world opened up. And at college, I got accommodations. I learned what I could do, what I couldn't do. And I learned that there were people there that would help me. It was stunning. I used to fear libraries because they used the Dewey Decimal System and I could never figure it out because I got the numbers all mixed up. Now I could walk into a library and say, I need this. And they would say, great, we'll help you go get it. Someone would help me. It was stunning. It was amazing. I actually went from college to graduate school. And from graduate school, I went into neuroscience to study other people's brains. Because not only was my brain different, every brain was different. And it was the coolest thing in the world. And from there, I went in to figure out, well, if all these brains are different, we shouldn't be teaching one way. We should be teaching all these different kinds of brains. And guess what? From there, I went on to found my own school that taught to all these different kinds of brains. And that school won all kinds of national awards. So now that's what I do. But can you imagine me, the kid who couldn't get through school, runs a school. Go figure. That's kind of a cool thing. But if I can do it, you can do it. Because who would have thought? I could barely get through school. Now I run a school. So if I can do it, you can do it. But that's a pretty amazing thing. But what I really want to talk to you about is this stress thing, because there's a huge connection between having learning differences and stress and anxiety. And this is what I don't want you to get caught up in, because you need to understand if you have any of these learning differences, doesn't matter if it's dyslexia, dyscalculia, ADD, split focus is what they used to call ADD, any of those, dysgraphia, you are more prone, everybody gets stress, but you're more prone to anxiety, and you just have to figure it out, know it, and figure out how to use it to your advantage, because I don't want it to get the better of you. You don't need to have ulcers, and you don't need to have it get to your self-esteem. You need to become the master of it, and you can. So, a bit about stress. Stress, totally normal reaction. Whether you're any human in the world, you get stress. Every human in the world. You don't need to have a learning difference to get stress. Stress is your body's, it's an evolutionary reaction. What do I mean by that? Evolutionary. What's that word mean? What's evolution? Anybody? Yeah.
It's when somebody evolve. They evolve and they change.
Right. So you evolve and change. When we evolved, we went from crawling in the swamp, we were cavemen, cave women, right? So it's how we learn to survive, right? Stress is a reaction by your body and brain to the perception of being put in harm's way, right? If there's a lion coming at you, what should you do?
Give it a hug.
And if you gave that lion a hug, you would be that lion's lunch, right? So, unless you're in the play, that kind of lion, you can give a hug. But in the real world, you know, your brain, the oldest part of your brain is called the amygdala. Inside your brain, it's called the lizard brain. Part of your brain is designed. There's a little bit of neuroscience I'm going to teach you. But the oldest part of your brain is designed to have a stress response. And it's basically designed to figure out something's coming at you. It's going to answer a question. Can you eat it or can it eat you? Right? That's a very good question. If you can eat it, great. But if it can eat you, run away. Yeah.
So, from my understanding, that's like, oh, this math problem is wrong. Is this gonna eat it? Am I gonna eat this math sheet?
No, well, so stress, physiological, psychological. So, right? Psychological, the math problem. Psychological. So, your stress response, it's trying to keep you out of harm's way. So let's go to that for a second. Your amygdala, this is the lizard part of your brain I was talking about, right there. It's going to have the fight or flight reaction. Who's heard of fight or flight? You've heard of that? That's fight or flight reaction that's that part of your brain your amygdala is responsible for. So the can it eat it, can you eat it, can it eat you? That's the fight or flight reaction in action. So that's the lion coming at you, you're going to run away. You do that without thinking. That is the instant, you know, you're crossing the street, you see the car, you dodge out of the way. That's fight or flight reaction. You do it instantaneously without thinking. You know immediately what to do, right? Same thing. Now, you all have that ability to react to stress. You do it, nobody has to tell you, right? Sometimes flight, run away, flee, that's the absolute right course of action. Fight, sometimes you're going to stand, you're going to overcome that obstacle, you subdue that threat. You do the math problem, you conquer it, you feel pretty good.
Or you hit it with a baseball bat.
And that might be the right reaction. Now, here's the deal. Your brain remembers these past experiences. That can be good. That can be not so good. This is where you can build resilience, or you can build what I call scar tissue. I'll give you an example. When I was growing up, I had a really hard time speaking in public. I used to get assigned public speaking, like going through middle school. They'd assign me to get up and give a speech. I had a really hard time memorizing speeches. And so they'd assign me to get up and give a speech, and I would physically start to shake. And I couldn't, and I had notes, and I'd start to shake, and I couldn't do it. By 9th grade, it had gotten so bad that I got up to speak, and at one point I was supposed to get up, and I passed out. I passed out clean away in front of my class. Like it was that bad. So again, that's a phobia. A phobia is where that fear gets to be so bad that it becomes paralyzing, right? It can be so bad. And if every single time that bad experience, that stress reaction, your brain remembers it, you're laying in scar tissue, it gets worse and worse and worse. It gets harder and harder to overcome every time. If, on the other hand, once you begin to lay in a good memory, you've overcome that obstacle. Okay, starting in college, I started to do more public speaking where, wait a minute, I got up in front of a smaller group. Wait, I did it. Then I got up in front of a next smaller group. I did it again. Little by little, by the time I was an adult, I was speaking in front of 10,000 people. I did okay. I got better and better at it. Now, all of a sudden, that phobia was completely gone, right? So you can do it in reverse. You can lay in good memories and overcome those obstacles. So good stress, you build resilience after you've overcome a challenge and you know you can master it. That's the skill building you want to do. You want to use that good stress to overcome, and not, even if you laid in some bad scar tissue, you can build back over it. So you want to build in the good stress. Bad stress, you can feel like you have no control and you can freeze. You ever heard that phrase, deer in the headlights? Yeah. People who freeze, the psychological version is people who shut down. They give you something, maybe it's a reading challenge. They ask you to read out loud. They ask you to do speech and you freeze. I was shutting down. That's the psychological version. Yeah.
But can you use bad tissue to help you? Like if you like the first time you try it, it's bad, and you use that memory to help you work on it the next time?
You absolutely can use that. If you have the kind of personality that uses that bad stress as a challenge for yourself. In other words, if you're the kind of person who says, I'm going to use this to be my personal challenge, I'm going to take that on to overcome it. You know what I mean?
Not really.
So if you say to yourself, I'm going to make this a goal. I'm going to make standing and speaking in front of the public, I'm going to make public speaking a goal. I'm going to use that kind of stress as a goal. Is that what you mean?
No, but like if you're trying a math problem and then you make a mistake and then you go to the next one, and then you're like, oh, I did this wrong, and then you use that as
like a personal challenge?
No, it's like a support. Like
learning from your mistake?
Yeah.
Yes, you can do that. Like you're going to take it and use that one to learn for the next time. So build on your mistake, like that? Is that what you mean? Yes, absolutely. So the key is to use all of this to build your resilience. So to take all these mistakes, or to take all the bad stress and build on it, but not to freeze. Remember what I did when I did that speech was I froze, absolutely froze, and not to shut down, passing out, another version of shutting down, but then figure out how am I going to next time build on that and use that bad stress to become good stress. Good and bad stress with dyslexia. People with dyslexia, you might have trouble reading, spelling, math, PowerPoint. Good stress. Past experiences tell you I can do this, I've done it before, I've had success, I can overcome this. That's where you want to build your successes. Bad stress, run away. I wanted to cancel the event, right? That was my runaway response. I can't do this. This is way too difficult. Even if other people are telling you can, the key is you have to tell yourself you can. Sometimes it's just got to come from within. That's where you have to do this. Your perception becomes your reality. And it's not going to be till you tell yourself you can do it. Here's the anxiety connection. Stress is a fear of what is. Anxiety is a fear of what will be, what might be. Anxiety isn't real. Stress is what is. Anxiety are your fears. Severe anxiety is phobias. So anxiety taken to a real extreme is a phobia. So like my public speaking thing where I couldn't pass out, where I passed out, that's a phobia. Anxiety can be situational. can be general, could be social, it could be so bad that you don't want to be around people, that's social anxiety. Dyslexics and all those with learning differences have higher levels of anxiety than other people do, but that's because you've been in situations maybe where you're afraid to read out loud, things like that. Again, use it to your advantage. Turn all those disadvantages to advantages. Anxiety girl, able to jump to the worst conclusions in a single bound, right? She's worried about things. This is taken from the International Dyslexia Association, and I've changed some of the words. They go from distress to de-stress, but if you look at all the first letters, it spells de-stress. But I changed what their words are. They say define how your learning difference works for you. Everyone is different. Your difference is your strength. I now see my dyslexia and all my differences as my strength. They make me more creative. I use all that as my creativity. My ADD allows me to get more done in a day than any one of my colleagues. Yes, I jump around. Yes, in the middle of meetings, I get highly distracted, and my administrative team every so often goes squirrel because I go off topic. It's true, but I also get more done than any one of my colleagues does in a day because I get so much going. So find ways of using your differences as your strengths. Educate yourself and those around you. Just because they're teachers and adults doesn't mean they're automatically going to understand what your specific learning difference is. We have one 8th grader at our school, and this is a tip I will give you, who every year at the start of school does a PowerPoint on her dyslexia and what she needs from our teachers. Now, she's about to graduate. I guarantee you that at her next high school, she will do that PowerPoint for all of her teachers. Now, I guarantee you she will also have some teachers who ignore everything she says and they're kind of jerks and don't listen to what she needs. But she will also have those teachers at her next school who are like, wow, she really self-advocates. I'm going to give this kid whatever she needs and try and help her. She also has those teachers who wrote her phenomenal recommendations because they said, this kid really knows her learning style, really knows what she needs, and self-advocates. So ask for what you need. You may not always get it, but you should always ask. Self-advocate. You have to ask for what you want. People are not mind readers. Doesn't mean you'll always get it, but if you don't ask for it, don't expect people to know. So you be your best advocate and try. Don't give up. Set small goals and try. Don't ever give up and don't shut down, right? You shut down, you're the only one who can help yourself. Reduce the threat. Try and learn what sets you off. What are your particular triggers? My guess is every single one of you has a different trigger. I hate PowerPoints. Some of you may love them. Some of you may have different things that set you off. Some of you may hate standing up to read out loud. Some of you may love public speaking. Some of you may hate different things. You guys have a play coming up. That's amazing. That may be your strength. What are your particular triggers? Figure out what they are. Exercise, as in physical exercise, reduces your stress. It reduces what's called your cortisol level in your brain. The more you can do aerobic exercise, I don't care if it's skateboarding, running, biking, swimming, it actually reduces your stress level. So get out, run around on the playground, do whatever you can. Yeah.
Speaking of the play, are you going to come see it?
I just heard about it, so I would love to come see it. And we have a play coming up on next Thursday that I just invited all of you to at Woodland.
What's it about?
We're doing Willy Wonka.
Oh.
Yep. We're doing Willy Wonka. You guys are doing The Wizard of Oz. So we'll trade plays. Success. Find big and small ways to succeed. Start with little goals. Build on that. Remember, your brain remembers all your successes. So build on little successes. And finally, this is the big one for me. Strategize and create systems. I live at 57 years old. I still live by my systems. I have whiteboards all over my house. I don't leave the house every day without going through my checklist because I can't live without systems. I need to know that I've got my hearing aids in, that I've got my keys, that I've got my bag. I can't do things without remembering. So I have systems all over my house because I can't live without systems. I have systems in my office. Figure out what are the systems that work for you. Is it a plan book? Is it on your phone? Is it, maybe you don't have phones yet, but whatever it is, what are the systems that are going to work for you? You're going to have a million kinds of things to access in your lifetime. Find the systems that are going to work with your brain, because that is how you will succeed. I also know I work great with an executive assistant because I can't spell. To this day, I can't spell. I need a good editor. I'm a great writer, but I need a good editor. So I know, exactly. But when you get to be a CEO, you know you're going to need a great editor and executive assistant. What are the systems you're going to need to succeed? Okay, and that is it. You guys have been awesome. I will take questions, and I thank you for being a great audience. Yeah.
Okay, so quick question. When you have dyslexia or ADHD or recalculate, I'm sorry.
All of the above. Yes, yes, yes.
When you have those things, like I know a lot of my friends have recalculus and ADHD and dyslexia, but how, like, what is your best strategy to get through the day when people call you names if everyone ever did that to you about being dyslexic or having ADHD?
So here's the thing. Everybody has something, and people who calling you names, they're trying to feel up by making you feel down. And so the question is, you just have to remind yourself, everybody's got something, and if they're trying to put you down, they're trying to make themselves feel up. And so you got to ask yourself, what's going on in their life that they're needing to do that? I can't level off their life to make somebody else stop doing that. You sort of have to build a little bit of a thick skin. I've been called every name in the book for lots of reasons, but you kind of have to have a little bit of a thick skin around that and just say, yeah, and that's my gift. Because I think it's a gift. I don't think it's something that I have to feel defensive about. So for somebody to be looking to call you a name around that, you just have to say, you let it go. And you just have to wonder what's going on in their life that they're looking to put somebody down around something. So it's hard. It is hard because it's somebody looking to bully is what's going on, right? It's tough. It's tough. Oh, trust me, my brothers told me I was dropped off by aliens from another planet. They did,
Yeah,
right?
my sister said I was born on a highway because that's where accidents happen.
Right. Right. So there you go. Exactly. It's tough.
I wasn't.
No, right. And I wasn't dropped off by aliens. It gets better though. I mean, my brothers and I have come to somewhat of a better pace.
Dropped off by aliens sounds pretty cool.
Well, it wasn't at the time though. It hurt. It hurt at the time when they said that.
Yeah, you have terrible sci-fi graphics.
Yeah. Questions? Yep. I can't hear the questions, guys. Yeah. I was bullied plenty. I was bullied plenty because I was the kid who, when teachers asked the question and they would point and ask a question, there was this dead silence in the class. And then the class would break out in laughter. Or worse still, this was the one I would hate. I would get called on to read aloud. I couldn't read aloud. Like I couldn't. I would sit there and my finger would be on the word and I'd take a deep breath and I'd start and I'd get through a couple of letters and I'd struggle and I'd get through a couple more letters and then you'd have usually one of my friends sitting next to me trying to whisper, but everybody of course could hear the whisper, right? Because she's trying to have it only me hear it, but everybody else could hear it too. And then of course all the people around would laugh. It just wasn't it wasn't a good moment, you know, and so it was hard, right? Because I also it wasn't like I was one of the cool kids, because I wasn't one of the cool kids. I never really had fashion sense, so I wasn't saved by that. And everybody knew my brothers were really smart, and I wasn't. And it wasn't like my brothers treated me well in school either. So it was like, you know, I was just doomed from the get-go. So it was brutal. It was just brutal. So I tried to really stay out of, like, I tried to stay out of the limelight and out of the radar, but it was just, I was doomed. And so it was tough. It was tough. Yeah. You know, but who gets the last laugh now? I run a school. And I got, believe it or not, that same high school awarded me their Distinguished Alumni Award 4 years ago. And my speech at that award ceremony was, nobody would have thought in 1979 I would be the distinguished anything. Right? Like, wow. Yeah.
Where is the school that you're?
My high school is in New York. Right? Yeah. Yeah. And my graduate school that I graduated from is a university called Harvard.
Harvard? What's it like?
In Cambridge, Massachusetts. Yeah. It's kind of known. Yeah.
Whenever people make fun of you always like say that would make you feel better.
When people no, because you know what I have to tell you, when people made fun of me early on, I believed them. I have to tell you, early on, when people made fun of me, I swallowed it. I used to think I was fat, ugly, and stupid. That was early on what I thought. Because those were the 3 words my brothers told me. And if you're hearing it at home and you're hearing it at school, what do you think?
It's true.
You thought it was true. And so that's what I believed. And that it wasn't until around junior year of high school that I started to go, like when I was working with the little kids, that it was the little kids who started to make me question it, right? Because little kids are pretty authentic. And I started to go, wait a minute, hang on a sec. And it was the little kids that made me start to question everything. And so you guys want to start to have a different perspective on yourself, I strongly recommend you get in and you start working with kindergartners, 1st and 2nd graders, because they're authentic and they tell it like it is. If you're having a good day, a bad day, they will set you straight. Yeah.
Are your brothers like now?
They are big old lawyers.
Oh, wow.
They are, and they're awesome, and we have a much very different relationship now.
Also, when they called you the initial stand for bus, so I really bus.
Yeah, we have a very different relationship now, and it's been quite readjusted. I will tell you that it's been quite readjusted, our relationship. But they would be doing the older brother thing, but I had no perspective on that. I also, by the way, learned sign language because I couldn't pick up a language other than ASL. American Sign Language, which dyslexics can pick up pretty easily. I also ended up married to a deaf guy. So, yeah.
What grade do you teach at Woodland?
At Woodland, I am in charge of the sexuality education program. All of it. So I ended up being a sex lady. Yeah, that's true. Makes me kind of fun at parties. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. No, it's, I know. It's, I'm sorry.
What is your parents?
Sorry. What did my parents think? You know, eventually my mom was like, oh, okay, you are that. So eventually they were like, my mom just didn't know what to do with that diagnosis because I got it in college. And she was like, oh, okay, whatever. You know, she had no idea what to do with that. Like, she was like, oh, whatever. You know, she just really sort of was clueless about that. Because it was, you know, I got it in college. At that point, I was sort of on my own. So, but at that point I was completely freed by it. It just took a weight off my shoulders. So that was pretty amazing. It was very freeing.
What did they think when you were little?
Oh, that when I was little, it was, again, she bought into the whole you need to work harder. Everything was I needed to work harder. I wasn't working hard enough. Clearly I wasn't working hard enough. That was the answer. You know? Yeah.
But you said that you were working like
21 hours a day. Mm-hmm.
It's not. It's nearly a whole entire day.
Right, because somehow what I was doing was not the equivalent to my older brothers. Somehow, maybe I was the dumb kid. I don't know. And there was also, remember back then there was a gender difference. Remember, this is back in the 60s and the 70s. She also had very different expectations of me, the girl, than the boys. Because back then there were she had big gender differences back then. We don't have now, thank goodness. But she had big gender difference expectations back then. Yeah. It'll come back. It'll come back. It'll come back. My message to you all is you can do or be anything. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. You really can. I'm here if you ever need help or support or anybody to remind you of that. Okay? As are your teachers, your faculty, everybody here will tell you that too. Don't give up on yourself. Don't stop believing in yourself, because you can. And thank goodness there's a school like this here that you have that support here and that specialized education here that will support you in that. I didn't have that. I had all those ulcers that thankfully you don't have to have to get what you need. You're going to learn the skills and have the tools you need here that will get you so far ahead. I'm so grateful you have this, really.
Well, thank you so much. This was wonderful.